Hi everyone, let's have a go now looking at conclusion source questions. So I've started with the question this time to make it a bit easier. So in this question we'll always say what conclusions can be drawn about a topic. In this case, crime in Scotland. So you always get 3 bullet points, and what you do is you read the sources and you try to find a conclusion about each topic. Number 1, the link between gender and prison population in Scotland. So you're looking for examples that in prisons, are there more men, are there more women? Who is more likely to be in prison in Scotland? Number 2, the link between gender and reconviction rates in Scotland. That's committing more crime when you leave prison. Again, find a conclusion which gender are more likely to commit crime when they leave prison. And the final one is the link between alcohol and crime in Scotland. So is there a significant link between alcohol causing crime? And then you will always get a final mini question, make an overall conclusion on which country's prisons are most like Scotland's. So look at the sources, try to work out which country's prisons have similar numbers, like reoffending rates, population, to Scotland. So in a conclusion question, you should take in 3 highlighters, different colours, one for each conclusion. And then you would do one conclusion about bullet point 1 is make your conclusion. Now you don't get a mark for that. The first mark is unlocked by giving the first example from the sources to back up the conclusion you make. So a conclusion, source example is worth 2 marks. At the end of it, if you had a comment to evaluate what it shows, that will get an extra mark. So in the next few slides, I will take you through how to answer this conclusion question from the Paper 2 exam last year, 2024. Okay, so on this slide is an example answer to the first bullet point, the link between gender and prison population in Scotland. Have a look through this for a few minutes. Not a few minutes, because we're going to sit like for 3 minutes in silence. Just a few, maybe 10 seconds. How many marks would it get? So, this would get 3 marks. How? The conclusion is that there are significant gender differences in the prison population between men and women, with far more men in Scottish prisons. So you looked at the sources and you worked that out. Then that conclusion at the top would gain 0 marks. The first mark is unlocked by giving the first example from source A. The second mark is unlocked by giving another example about how more men in prison. And the final mark is unlocked by adding a little comment about what this shows, that the overwhelming majority of Scotland's prison population are male. They make up 96% of the prison population in Scotland. So in total, you've got a conclusion, example from source, then a comment that evaluates, like says what it shows, and it uses good analytical language, like majority, overwhelming. That is really effective practice. So this is worth 3 marks, all right? So here is the second conclusion to the second bullet point, the link between gender and reconviction rates in Scotland. What reconviction means is like reoffending, committing more crime when you leave prison. So I've looked at the sources, and my conclusion that I've arrived at is that men are significantly more likely to be reconvicted compared to women. Remember, in the conclusion question, try to use good language like majority, significant. Remember, the conclusion would not gain a mark. What unlocks the first mark is the first example from source A. The second mark is unlocked by using source C example. That's 2 marks. And then the final mark is a comment about what it shows. But if you read the comment, I've used the word notable difference. That's a good word to use. And also, I've worked out that men are around 5% more likely to be reconvicted. So in total, this would be awarded 3 marks. Conclusion, example, comment. So the final conclusion is about the link between alcohol and crime in Scotland. So I've looked at the sources and I've worked out that alcohol can be a significant factor in causing crime. So the sources tell you that alcohol is a factor that leads to crime. Now, the other 2 paragraphs, conclusions, have gained 6 marks. So for this one, you can make it worth 2 marks. Conclusion is at the top, source C and source A clearly proves that alcohol is linked to a lot of crime, especially violent crime. So this would gain 2 marks. Conclusion, source example, another source example. The final 2 marks for the conclusion question, you must read the question carefully, and underneath it, it gave you a final sort of mini question. Which country prisons is most like Scotland? So I looked at all the sources, and the conclusion that I made finally is that North Macedonia's prisons are most like Scotland. Because I've given one example from source A, they've got similar prisoner numbers, and one example from source A and B, that the female prison numbers are also very similar. So this would gain a total of 2 marks. So this whole question is worth 10 marks, and it will get 10 out of 10. I'm going to upload another conclusion question for you to look at. Any questions, or again, like I said, want anything marked, just send it to me or pop in and see me in school.